These video notes are over the age of Jackson and the bank war, looking at what happened during the Second Bank of the United States, or what happened to the Second Bank of the United States. So McCulloch versus Maryland stated that the Bank of the U.S. is constitutional, that it's okay for us to have one. It's not unconstitutional like some people argued, but it's okay. And in general, across the nation, there's less fear of banks. That doesn't mean there's no fear of banks, there's no distrust of banks, it's just less. That people are beginning to trust banks a bit more. And this is in the late 1820s, 1830s. Jackson's view of the Second Bank of the United States is that it's probably unconstitutional, and he has just like many people, a general distrust of banks. He doesn't think that they operate for the good of the people. He thinks that they are operating mostly for the good of the wealthy, and they end up hurting farmers and your average person, the common person. And as we know, Andrew Jackson is kind of the president of the common man, and so if it hurts the common person, he's going to be against it. Well, in 1832, he is up for re-election. Andrew Jackson is up for re-election. So he won in 1828, and he's running again in 1832 for re-election. And Henry Clay is running for president against Jackson. And you'll remember, Henry Clay was part of the so-called corrupt bargain, where he supported John Adams in the 1824 election. In 1824, nobody won a majority of the Electoral College, and so the decision goes to the House of Representatives, and there Henry Clay supports John Adams over Andrew Jackson, and so Adams ends up winning the presidency in the House of Representatives, even though Andrew Jackson got a plurality of popular votes. So he feels cheated. Henry Clay was then named Secretary of State, so he feels like there was a corrupt bargain. Well, Henry Clay and Andrew Jackson are bitter enemies at this point, and Henry Clay sees this. He sees that the banks are becoming more popular, and so he says, let's try to renew the charter for the Second Bank of the United States early. So the bank charter doesn't expire until 1836, but he says, hey, let's go ahead and get this renewed in 1832 when people are feeling better about banks. And that will, it'll make it clear. I'm for the bank. Jackson is against the bank. And so Clay seeks to renew the bank in 1832, get that charter renewed. So it's passed. And it looks to be like it would be renewed, but of course Jackson vetoes it. And because he vetoes it, it's not going to be renewed. Now, the charter is still good for 4 years. The existing charter is still good for 4 years. So the Second Bank of the United States is going to run the course of most of President Jackson's presidency. But because the renewal has been defeated, has been vetoed, he decides, you know what? I'm going to take this to the next level. So Jackson decides to veto the renewal, and then takes the next step of withdrawing all U.S. money from the Second Bank of the United States, and then depositing that money in state banks, and therefore the Second Bank of the United States is then killed. And so this picture here, this political cartoon we see here, is Andrew Jackson slaying the many-headed monster, where he is killing off the Second Bank of the United States. And all these different heads represent different heads of the Bank of the U.S. and portions of other enemies of his in the government that support the Bank of the United States. Chief of among those being Henry Clay, who you may see right here. So that is the bank war. Jackson is against the bank, but he's mostly against Henry Clay, and Henry Clay trying to use it as a political weapon against him. It clearly backfires on Henry Clay. Jackson wins re-election. Henry Clay loses and is never elected president. He wanted to be president very badly, but never does and never is elected president. So Jackson is successful in killing the bank and winning re-election. So this issue does not pay off for Henry Clay.